Marsh is not a swamp. Marsh is a space of light, where grass grows in water, and the water flows into the sky. With these opening lines, we are taken to a marshy land merging one with the sky at the horizon, as we fly further above the sea. And then there are much darker swamps inside the jungle. Barkley Cove, North Carolina, October 30th, 1969. Two boys cycle through the forest. Suddenly, one of them spots something near the swamp and gets down his bike to get a closer look. It is a body of a man covered in mud. The police arrive soon. The body is that of Chase Andrews, a popular local quarterback. The two officers look around for evidence or clues as to what might have happened. They can't seem to find Chase's footprints anywhere. There is a platform staircase nearby. So, the police climb up to see if they can find something there. Once they reach the top, they see the open gate on the platform, and exactly underneath, several feet below, lay Chase's body. The police make speculations about whether Chase opened the gate himself and jumped or if it was an accident. The autopsy discloses the time of passing between midnight and 2 a.m., and the cause of passing, sudden impact from the 63 feet drop. There was, however, some blood and hair on the support beam, possibly because he banged his head on his way down. But if that is so, one of the officers explains Chase should have fallen on his back. But there were no fingerprints or tracks found anywhere. But there were red fibers that were found on him which did not belong to him. The police then go to ask the people in the town if they know anything. The case has become a hot topic of discussion in the town. At a bar, while people are talking about the Chase incident, a woman introduces another element of the Marsh girl. The police officers visit the Marsh girl after getting a new lead on the case. They arrive at a stand-alone house in the middle of the marshy jungle. They are looking for Catherine Kaya Clark. No one is home, so they call out her name, but no one answers. One of the officers peeps through the window and finds something. The other officer checks the door and finds it unlocked. He goes inside and brings out a red scarf, a crucial piece of evidence that might lead to the conviction of Kaya. The police leave with the scarf, and we see Kaya hiding behind a tree, evading the police. The next scene takes us to the sheriff's department chasing Kaya on their boats. After chasing her in the waters for a while, Kaya gets off her boat and dashes into the jungle. The police officers split, and two police officers tail her. She runs into the woods and then jumps into the river, but gets caught by the other team of police that was chasing her on a boat. Kaya is arrested, and people hurl mean comments at her when she's taken to prison. Once inside the cell, she tries to look out from a very high window. A cat comes into the cell to keep lonely Kaya company. Kaya is sleeping when she is woken by keys dangling. She sees a man with a guard. The man introduces himself as Tom Milton. He is a lawyer and has volunteered to defend Kaya. Kaya is reluctant and doesn't answer any of Tom's questions. Tom tries once again. He reminds her how people know her as the Marsh girl, and when the trial starts, the jury will judge her with the hearsay. To avoid that and help her, Tom says he needs more information about her. Kaya isn't ready to open up, so Tom gives her some time to reconsider and then keeps a book about seashells on her bed, before he turns to leave. Kaya picks up the book and starts talking about how people forget the creatures that live in shells. She starts talking about the time she was a little girl. The year is 1953. Kaya was a fun-loving girl who lived with her mom, Julian, and her siblings. Jody, Kaya's brother, and Tate were best friends. Once Tate has come to invite Jody to fish, and Kaya and her sisters are playing on the boat. Suddenly, Kaya's furious father comes from inside the house and starts yelling at the sisters for ruining his boat. He doesn't stop there and proceeds to thrash the girls before sending them inside the house. But he is extra rough while handling Kaya. He hits her so hard that she falls into the river. Tate witnesses this and comes running to save her from her dad, who has pulled her out and is dragging her inside. Tate pushes him, which makes him lose balance and fall. Even though her father is abusing her, she still pushes Tate away for pushing her father. Julian comes to help her husband up, but becomes his next victim to face his wrath. She lies on the ground, injured, as he walks inside the house, hurling abuses. That night, Kaya covers her ears with her tiny hands to drown the noises of her father taking out his anger on her mother and her mother's cries. In the morning, Kaya sees her mother leaving with a suitcase. She has a deep gash on her cheek. Kaya runs out behind her and calls her, but she doesn't stop. She never came back, and after some time, her siblings Murph, Mandy, and Missy all ran away from their home, never to come back. Finally, Jody left too. Before leaving, he advises Kaya to run and hide deep in the marsh, way out where the crawdads sing. Kaya eventually learned how to live with him. She kept out of his way. She never let him see her, and she fends for herself. She had been in the water before, but never without Jody. So one day, she gets lost and curses Jody for leaving her alone. She is wandering in the river when she sees Tate's boat. He greets her and soon realizes she is lost. He makes her feel at ease and says he too gets lost in the river. Together, they make their way back, and before saying goodbye, Tate tells her his name and says he'll be there if she ever needs him. Something about Tate made her feel at ease. She remembers that after her mom and Jody left, she felt a different emotion than hurt. She felt brave. She faced her dad after a long time and said she was hungry. Her father takes her to a nearby store to get grits and some other things. He goes out with the shop owner and asks Kaya to get the things and change. The shop owner's wife asks Kaya a simple mathematical question. but she is not able to answer. She soon realizes Kaya doesn't go to school, and she doesn't eat well, since grits are not sufficient. So, the woman tells Kaya about school and the lunch that they serve in school. Kaya doesn't say anything, but just looks at her with helpless eyes. The owner's wife tells Kaya that she'll require a skirt to go to school. She then gives Kaya the things, the change, and a candy. Kaya looks at it and looks back at the woman with appreciation but doesn't say anything. Back home, Kaya looks at her sister's dresses and wears one. She makes her way to the town alone. The other kids going to school make fun of her, because her clothes are dirty and she is barefoot. This is the first time she meets Tom, who coaxes her to go to school when she loses her confidence because of other children's comments, and starts to walk back. After he nudges her, she goes to the class, and the teacher asks if she can read and write. She nods her head in affirmation. Her teacher asks her to spell dog, but she spells it as God, which makes the entire class laugh. As she goes to take a seat, she is subjected to mean comments by her classmates. She cannot take the insult, and she dashes out of the school. That was the first and the last day she ever spent in school. Kaya's father would not let her go or meet anybody. He thinks he is protecting her, but he is just making her isolated from everything. He teaches her that she cannot trust anybody and that she needs to protect herself. For some time, her father was nice to her. Seeing her interest in birds and their feathers, he gave her his old army knapsack. But she got distracted by the mailman. He had come with a mail from her mom. Kaya is ecstatic and runs to get it. When she returns, her dad takes it from her and reads it. He gets furious again and burns it without telling her the contents of the letter. He tells her that she is never coming back home. Kaya cries as she collects the ashes of the letter. That night, her father burnt everything that belonged to her mother. Soon after, her father left her too. She was left all alone to fend for herself. She didn't know how to cook except for grits. So she starts digging out mussels and goes to Barkley Cove's general store to sell them. She strikes a business deal with Mr. Barkley and, in return, buys grits, a candle, and some other things she requires. Mrs. Barkley promises to give her shoes from the church's donation. She suspects her dad has gone too. Every morning, Kaya would get up before dawn to dig out mussels. Mrs. Barkley gave her shoes and a new dress. She also taught her basic calculations. The warden's voice breaks her train of thought. He gives her some clothes provided by Miss Mabel, the shop owner's wife. Kaya cries as she sees the dress. She wears it on the day of her hearing. The court makes it clear if she is found guilty of the murder charges, the punishment for such an offense will be the death penalty. She is declared a convict even before the trial starts. In the evening, in her cell, Tom discusses the further course of action and introduces guilty plea, where she will have to accept that she went to meet Chase that night on the tower. They had a disagreement, and Chase stepped back only to fall to his death. The judge will rule it out as an accident, and she will get 10 years imprisonment, but will be out in 6. But Kaya is not willing to say anything that makes her culpable. She asks Tom to get her out of prison, in one way or the other. The next day, the trial begins in front of the jury. Against the allegations of the prosecutor, Tom tells the jury how it is easier to blame an outsider. Even though Kaya lives just 5 miles away from the town, she is still considered an outsider by the residents. He starts telling them a story of this girl, who was left all by herself when she was only 7 years old. The story of Kaya. Kaya drifts back into time. The year is 1962, and Kaya is growing into a beautiful young woman. She lives in solitude, and that is why one day, when she was on one of her walks in the woods, she saw a boy come her way. This freaked her out, and she ran to hide behind a tree. The next day, she sees a feather attached to a tree stump. She takes the white feather and wonders who would have kept it there. The next day, there is a packet for her that has vegetable seeds, a plug, and a letter. Kaya is thrilled, and she runs home to bring the white feather to place it on the stump as a thank you gesture. But when she reaches the place, she suddenly stops, seeing the young boy she saw earlier, putting another feather on the stump. The young boy is Tate. She hesitantly steps forward, and they exchange the feathers. He immediately recognizes the white feather, and she asks him how he knows about birds. Tate says his mom taught him. Kaya confesses she can't read the note. Tate tells her what he wrote in the note. He offers to teach her to read. After that day, they meet almost every day, and Tate teaches her to write and read. Kaya invites him to her house one day, and Tate is astonished to see how hard Kaya has been working. They read all the books in the library from summer to fall, and learn how plants and animals change over time to adjust to the ever-shifting earth. One day, Kaya reads the names of her family members, and cries as she misses them. She shares with Tate how invisible she feels. Tate comforts her. When he comes back to help his dad, he asks Tate what his relationship with the Marsh girl is. He tells him she is just a friend. His father reminds him not to lose focus on his dreams because of anybody. Tate knows he has worked hard, so he assures he will maintain his focus. A man from social services visits the Barkleys. He asks them about Kaya and asks them to call him the next time she visits their store. Tate comes to Kaya's home for their study session, but she takes him out into the woods, because Mabel told her about the man who visited them. Kaya hides from them because they will put her in some group home she doesn't want to go to. The two go into the woods, and she covers her tracks by spreading the soil on their footprints. As they talk, Kaya asks about Tate's mom. He tells her his mother and sister lost their lives in an accident, and that he feels guilty because they had gone to Asheville to get him a birthday present. Kaya feels bad for him. She comes closer to him and says it wasn't his fault. They look at each other, understanding each other's emotions. Tate gets distracted by the gust of wind blowing the leaves. They enjoy themselves trying to catch the leaves, and Tate kisses her, and nature celebrates their love by showering them with leaves in all hues. Kaya asks if she is his girlfriend now, and he says yes. They spend more time together, every day, their love growing stronger. On her birthday, Tate takes her to a place they haven't visited before. Kaya didn't even know it was her birthday. He got her a cake, and soon the real surprise came in. Thousands of snow geese flock toward the lake. She kisses him, thanking him for such a beautiful surprise. They start getting intimate, but Tate stops. He apologizes as he can't do this to her. Kaya understands. They keep seeing each other whenever they can. Tate looks at Kaya's book she has made about all the creatures around her, with notes on them. He brings up the subject of moving away. He will soon be joining college, and he has got a job in a biology lab, so he will be leaving in the coming week. Kaya pleads with him to stay, but he doesn't want to be a shrimper like his dad. He wants to make something of his life. Kaya fears he will never return, but Tate assures her he will come back for her. Kaya is not ready to listen to anything and runs from there. That night, Tate comes to meet her one more time before leaving the town. They spend the night together in her house. In the morning, Tate gives Kaya a list of publishers for Kaya's drawings and notes. He says she can mail the samples to the publishers. Tate doesn't want her to dig mussels for the rest of her life, so this will be a great way to bring in money. With teary eyes, Kaya says Tate will forget about her, but Tate promises he won't. They kiss each other goodbye. Kaya spends her days observing the life around her, painting them, and waiting for the 4th of July. Tate had promised he'd be home. On the 4th, she dresses up nice and even puts on old lipstick. She goes to the shore and waits there. But the entire day goes by, and nobody comes. Such is her conviction that she sleeps on the shore. In the morning, she feels betrayed. For her, Tate, love, and life have been the same thing. They all were gone. Enraged, she tears up the pages of her book and burns them. They carried a meaning till Tate was with her. Now that he is gone, they are meaningless. It took her time to get over the heartbreak, but the marsh helped her move on. Back in the present, the sheriff's statement is being recorded. He claims no footprints were found, indicating the evidence had been tampered with. Tom hands out a data chart that indicates that the night Chase went to the tower, they had low tides. But at midnight, the tides rose, washing away any footprints made by Chase, which explains why no prints were found. Tom also points out that no fingerprints were found on the tower or the grate, and the grates were generally left open. He shows the court a copy of the application submitted by the sheriff where he has himself written, "If any action is not taken, it will cause serious injury or loss of life soon." As Tom walks back to his seat, he gives an assuring smile to Kaya. In the summer of 1968, the beach is full of people. Kaya sits in the corner with her notebook when her eyes meet a pair of eyes looking at her. It is Chase, and he smiles at her. She reciprocates. She is returning home when she sees somebody outside her house, and she hides. The man is taking pictures of her house and surroundings. She runs to the Barclays and tells them what she saw. They tell her the man was probably a developer. They have been all around the marsh lately, looking for lands to build hotels. This stresses Kaya. Mabel suggests she find a title or a deed stating that the house and the adjoining land belonging to her. She comes out of the store with some groceries. Outside the store, she again runs into Chase, who offers to carry her groceries. Very confidently, he asks her out on a date, and she says yes. Kaya soon visits the treasury to get the status of the land, and it is revealed that it was bought by Kaya's grandfather and was never sold afterward, making Kaya the owner by inheritance. But for that, she has to pay the back taxes on the land, which amounts to $800. It had been 5 years since Tate gave her the list of publishers, and finally, she was going to follow the path he showed. She writes to several publishers and submits samples. On Sunday afternoon, she is on a picnic date with Chase. They find a rare pink shell, and Chase is impressed by her knowledge of shells. He then leans in, and they share a romantic moment. But Chase starts pushing it forward, which makes Kaya push him away. He apologizes and asks if he can make it up to her. He takes her to the fire tower to see the entire marsh from above. Kaya is mesmerized by how her home, the marsh, looks from above. Chase asks her to take him to her home. She is reluctant, but he gets his way. She takes him home and walks on the tip of her toes, because Chase barges in, looking at everything very intently. Kaya finally asks him what he wants from her. He compliments her looks and intelligence. He apologizes again for his behavior at the beach, and says he will not do anything till she wants him to do something. She forgives him, and they start dating. Kaya doesn't feel much different around Chase, but she is glad she is not lonely anymore. The evidence against Kaya, her red ski cap, is being discussed. The woolen splinters found on Chase match the red ski cap that was found in Kaya's residence. With his acumen, Tom again changes the course of the trial by stating that the fibers could have transferred to Chase's jacket any time before the incident, not necessarily indicating it happened at the time of the incident when Chase fell. Kaya soon hears from one of the publishers who want to publish her book. She rushes out to tell Chase about it, but Chase has his own news to share, so Kaya doesn't say anything. In the evening, she tells him, and he maneuvers the conversation to marriage. He shares his plans to marry her, now that he is promoted. Even though his parents don't approve of his relationship, he is not one of those who gets easily swayed. He convinces her to accompany him to a work he has in Asheville. They are going to be there for 2 days. As soon as they reach their hotel, they start getting intimate. But for Kaya, it is a nightmare. She endures the pain so as not to upset Chase. After Chase catches his breath, he professes his love for her. Kaya gives him the shell necklace she made for him, which he wears every single day. In the trial, it was pointed out that the necklace was missing from the items recovered from Chase's body. Mrs. Andrews is in the witness box, testifying against Kaya. She believes that Chase broke up with Kaya, which Kaya couldn't handle, so she eliminated him and took her shell necklace back. Kaya is taken down memory lane once again. This time in the year 1969. Tate has finally returned home. He makes his way to see Kaya but sees her with Chase and knows he has missed his chance. On the dock, he hears Chase talking about Kaya to his friend. They are discussing the bedroom stories, and Tate doesn't like it, so he confronts Chase and asks him not to talk about Kaya like that. This leads to a slight altercation between them. Kaya is getting ready for her date with Chase. She hears some sound and runs out, thinking Chase has come, but finds Tate standing in front of her. As soon as she sees him, she starts throwing stones at him. He says he has come to talk to her, and continues by saying Chase is not good enough for her. But Kaya makes it very clear that she doesn't want to see him. She is very upset with him for abandoning her without any explanation. Tate explains that once he left, he thought he had to choose between her and everything else. He chose the latter and soon found out the scholarship, the jobs, and everything else meant nothing without Kaya. With tears in his eyes, he gives her a feather and tells her he works in a lab near the town, and that he has come back for good. Kaya is helpless again. She loved him dearly but also hated him for leaving him. Now that he is back, professing his love for her again, she can't seem to choose what to do. She goes back inside her house, leaving him outside. Kaya bumps into Chase in the town. He is astonished to see her there. Soon his friends join him, and one of the girls, Pearl, introduces herself as Chase's fiancée. Kaya is stunned at this revelation. She runs back home but soon hides when Chase reaches her place. Chase tries to find her but leaves after not finding her anywhere in her house. Once Chase leaves, Kaya runs to the shore and screams out of frustration. She had known her whole life she had to stay alone, because people leave. Her book gets published, and she earns a lot. With that money, she clears the previous debts and gets the murky swamp on her name. Jody came back to meet Kaya after seeing her book. He joined the army. He doesn't know about their other siblings, but he bears bad news about their mother. She passed because of leukemia. Kaya writes a thank you note in one of her books and leaves it with Backley for Tate. But Chase and his rowdy friends walk in, and she hides. She tries to sneak out without grabbing their attention, but Chase sees her. He calls her out, and she assertively asks him to leave her alone. His friends gaslight him. He then sneaks up on Kaya at the beach and forces himself on her after hitting her for not listening. But Kaya puts up a fight, and before he can get his way, she strikes him. And once he's down, she kicks him and runs away, yelling if he bothers her again, she won't leave him. This is heard by a fisherman. At the trial, the fisherman tells the jury that he heard Kaya say those exact words. Kaya goes back home, packs some essentials, and leaves. That day, she understood why her mother had to leave. She takes her boat out and hides in it. When she returns home, her entire house is turned upside down. But Kaya wasn't going to live in fear. She waits for him at night, hiding behind the bushes with a rock. But instead, Tate comes and gets furious at Chase after seeing Kaya's injuries. Kaya asks him to leave, but he doesn't want to leave her side, especially after seeing what Chase did to the girl he loves. Kaya tells him she plans to go to Greenville next week to meet her publishers to talk about her next book, but Chase ruined it for her. Tate encourages her to go and not give up on her dreams because of Chase. He tells her about the bus that goes to Greenville. He will arrange a hotel for her and advises her to stay there for a week. He promises to see her when she returns. Kaya is cold, so Tate gives her his red cap. She throws it back to him, and they pass it to and fro, which takes us back to the court. Tate, Mr. and Mrs. Barkley, and Jody have come in support of Kaya. Mr. Barkley or Jumpin' asks Kaya how she got her injuries when she comes to his store to get the bus schedule. He is concerned for her, because after her father left her, he and Mabel looked after her as parental figures. Jumpin' has tears in his eyes, because he and Kaya both know what will happen if she reports Chase. Kaya soon leaves for Greenville. She meets her publishers, and the meeting goes on for a few hours. In the court, it is speculated that Kaya made an overnight round trip from Greenville to lure Chase into coming to the fire tower, and eliminated him by pushing him through the grate. Tom tells the jury about Kaya's history, and presents them with an argument as to how she can come back and execute everything in such a short span of time. After the break, the jury has come to a decision. The court has set Kaya free of any charges against her. There is a collective gasp in the courtroom. The judge apologizes to Kaya for the amount of time she has served in the prison. Mabel and Jumpin' hug her, and Tate comes too, but she doesn't let him hold her hand for long. She asks Jody if he can take her home, and before exiting, she looks at Tom and nods in gratitude for whatever he has done for her. Kaya is happy to be home. She looks around to see her things as it is. She gets a note from Tate, and she comes to know how much he has yearned for her all these years. Kaya finally lets him in her life, and the two reconcile. The two spend a romantic moment, and Tate asks her to marry him. Years pass, Kaya's new books are published. She bears kids. Jumpin passes away. Many things change. Tate and Kaya spend their entire lives in the marsh, studying and enjoying nature. Kaya is now 70. She is alone in the boat when she sees her mother coming back to her. She turns into the 7-year-old Kaya and cries for her mother. Later, Tate finds her lying unconscious in the boat near the dock. She is finally one with the marsh she loved so much. One day, Tate is packing all her collections over the years to donate to the Conservation Laboratory of the University of North Carolina. He is looking through her journal when he comes across a passage that says that sometimes, for prey to live, its predator must die. There she has drawn a sketch that resembles Chase, and at the back of the journal, in an enclosed space, he finds the shell necklace that was the missing link in the case. Tate looks at it, and his expressions change as he recognizes it. He goes to the shore and drops the shell in the sea. In the end, in a monologue, Kaya talks about how she is one with everything found in the marsh and the sea. And one will always find her in the dark reaches of the marshes, where hundreds of fireflies beckon, way out yonder, where the crawdads sing.